Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on Upfront in the Prophetic. We're so blessed that you are here. Oh my goodness, another day. It seems like the years are just flying past, but I have my brother from another mother, Derek Johnson, with us. If you guys don't know who he is, shame on you. Oh my gosh, you can find him on Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, basically everywhere. And it's a good person to really latch onto for information on what's going on. So a little bit about him. He's a veteran, influencer, and a musician, and so much more. And we're going to talk about basically, we all can feel it, the spiritual warfare that's out there. For every believer and every patriot, this is a time where you need discernment. Discernment is key. And I'm hearing a little feedback, and I just rebuke that in the name of Jesus. Come on now. Um, but discernment is key for this time and season. And we're also noticing that misinformation is at an all-time high. It's hard to believe anyone, really. I mean, who's good, who's bad? Is this all a show? Well, we're gonna go ahead and tap into that. So without further ado, Derek Johnson, how are you, my brother?
Well, I'm doing all right. Just day by day,
I know,
that's how it
right?
goes.
Well, that's how we need to take it. And I know for you, just the attacks that have been coming your way from the north, south, east, and west, and we prayed a little bit beforehand, and I'm really gonna stand on that. And Alan and I will stand in the gap with you that no weapon shall prosper, no weapon. And there's so much jealousy within the influencers out there. Oh, hey, I got the intel today. You copied me, and it's just so stupid. It's like, and I really believe that this is what the enemy really wanted to begin with, is let's get everybody against each other. You have the race card. Now you have like who's got the best intel, and oh, I got this many people and you only got that many people. Hey, come on now, brothers and sisters, it's time to come together, right? And stand, pray, and then be that voice like you are. You are a huge voice out there, and a lot of people listen to you. You've actually were the first one that brought up law, the laws and orders, continuity. I mean, the whole military aspect, because a lot of people, most people don't realize that the civilian life and the military life, yes, I mean, what you see, you can tell there's a difference, but even by the laws, there's a huge difference. And a lot of people, just don't grasp that. But I wanted to kind of go into, this whole thing in regards to the operation that we're in. I remember, Trump mentioning about the final battle. Do you believe that we are truly in the final battle in 2024?
Well, yes, and then pairing with that is that, real quick, if I can jump back to what you just said there about the whole, the competition type stuff that people try to make this, is that I was on the other side of the fence just 2 years ago. I was sitting, praying to God what His direction was for me, because I had two billboard hits. Two billboard hits don't sound like a lot to some people that's never had them. You'd think that they would. My dentist the other day, I come in there and he's like, man, that's a fancy buckle, and I say, man, cowboys. That's the only thing fancy about a cowboy is their buckle, if you got one, and and it's my buckle that was awarded to me by certain people with my billboard hits, and it's just what cowboys do. They wear it on a buckle. They wear whatever that accolade is. And I said, well, I just have two billboard hits, and he said, well, that's two more than me, So, and 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but of course those were 2020 and 2021 when I had those, and I mean, you dream your whole life, or I did, of hitting billboards, seeing my name with George Strait and all my honky tonk heroes back then. Of course, a lot of them are retired now, so the names I saw myself next to wasn't someone I necessarily dreamed to see my name next to. I never dreamed to see my name next to Luke Bryan or Morgan Wallen or someone like that. They didn't exist back then.
Right.
But I did get to see it go past Sammy Kershaw and George Strait and people like that. So you're like, man, this is the thing. But if
Right.
you don't get into the top 20, it's not published to the world. And they stopped publishing top 30, top 40. So now they only publish top 20. So if you're not in the top 20, the country music fans don't see that. So you can spend your whole life doing what I did. And I mean, I try to make videos go viral, like music videos. Hey, I wrote a new song today. Check this one out. And it would be like I wrote a song with Casey Beathard, one of the biggest hit writers in Nashville, um, and a patriot, by the way. But Casey and I wrote a song about domestic violence, and you'd have thought a song like that with a big hit writer. I mean, we're talking about the same guy who wrote "Don't Blink" by Kenny Chesney. She thinks we're just fishing, Trace Atkins. Life's not the breath you take, George Strait. It maybe got 5 shares, and that's the reality around the world we live in. If you have something that people resonate with, they'll share it. And little did I know that getting on a video Facebook Live in the middle of nowhere one day and just saying, "Hey, the obvious," And if people would go back, my passion that day wasn't really necessarily around that Donald Trump is still your president, commander in chief, because of the war codes he put in. More than he's still president too. I mean, so that's where people try to separate those. I separated them only because of the military justice side. But when you look at military, the absolute end of military, the absolute being the key word, is when people give their lives in that uniform, what we call the ultimate sacrifice. And we have so many memorial graves all over this nation that they didn't get to live their lives. They 17, 18, 19 years old is the predominant number of those ages. And then with the except, a little outlier, some 30-year-olds, 35, et cetera. But the majority of those were 17, 18, 19 years old. They gave it all. And
Yeah.
so that's where my passion was that, come on, people, the military life is completely separate. You don't have to understand it, but you can. And
Right.
then laws and orders, not all laws and orders are great. I agree with that. Not all legislation's great. But legislation is what Congress has used for and against us. And
Right.
if you stop learning legislation, which is the key 3 words of the Declaration of Independence, we the people equals we the government. We're the government. They work for us. The Constitution wasn't written to put us in check, the people, it was written to keep them in check by us. So at the point Americans stop learning legislation, laws and orders, then you're doomed, because if you come into a legislator, someone who writes a law, all right, you come into them, you go to your congressman, you get a meeting with them, and you go in there all kinds of cussing and acting and sounding ignorant, they're not going to listen to you. So
Right.
if you come in there knowing legislation, even if you're 110% against everything, at least if you know it, you'll sound educated and intelligent. There's a huge difference in those, but you'll sound intelligent when you walk in there, even if you don't have an education. You can say, "Hey, I don't like this. I don't like this. How did this get here? What can we do to fix this?" Well, then legislators have to have a majority too to change a law, as we know, 2/3 of a vote to change certain things. So, when people know there's simple form of how we function and operate in the U.S., then that's where the power of your voice becomes powerful, no matter what side of the aisle you're on.
Mhm.
And that's what gets me about certain people, is that they want to argue and fuss. That's what we've been doing for 100 years, 150 years, really, if you want to go back to the Organic Act. But for the last 60 years, you could probably just put a real good stamp on it. Since JFK, things just went drastically downhill. And they pinned us against our core values, right? Being patriotic, being religious, and any other thing. Uh, but patriotism is probably the worst. But then racism, so those 3 big topics: race, religion, and then patriotism, they pinned us all against each other. So how do you break that? You go back to the basics. if I've told people when I came shot out the gate, I expected people to hold me off at a distance because there's a lot of people out there. But what I show are your basic core principles of the United States, the foundation. And you got to look at the Constitution, how it was written, when it was written, why it was written. You can't take it today and say, well, I want it this way, that way, because there's still a majority of people who want it as the original context. And it was supposed to be amended along the way. It has been. There's a lot of amendments. So that's the thing that gets me, I think, the most when people want to argue, debate, fuss, gripe, complain. You just say, name the three branches of government.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I always do to them. I say, one, did you vote? Two, name the three branches of government because data shows 68% of America can't even name the three branches of government. So if you can't name the three, how can you talk about laws, legislation, and what's going on? Because the three branches write the laws, pass the laws, and
Yeah.
interpret the laws. And you don't have to be a politician, a lawyer, or any kind of scholar or a veteran to know legislation. And you just have to be willing to read. I tell people all the time, this is your Department of Education right here, right between their ears. That's your Department of Education. And you have to be willing to read it. Now it's gonna be difficult if you've never seen the terms in the glossary before, but that's where you start. If you struggle with the terms and glossary, then start there. If you don't struggle with the terms and glossary, then start with the basics of what's been put into place right now.
Yeah, it's a shame that they don't even teach that or never have taught it, and especially, I mean, when I went to school, that was a long time ago. um, about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or any of that, So, and I think, of course, that they did that intentionally, so that the
Mhm.
people would be, brainless in regards to their rights as we the people. But you, I believe, have been appointed and anointed to give that information, and I pray that people are taking heed to that. You mentioned several things. I mean, in regards to the billboard, being two hits, and you just did a song with, and I'll get back to the other question originally, but you just did a patriotic song with Billy Falcon too, didn't you?
We did. We've written quite a few now. I've got one more that we're gonna put out that I hadn't vocally recorded it yet. We did the full session and everything, but yeah, we got the one out there of if you want to fight, you got one. So we got that one, and just a couple more we're working on.
I love it. Looking forward to hearing them for sure. And of course, again, before I get to the question I previously asked, your new book. I mean, the books are flying off the shelf, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and it's been quite a journey with that too. We decided to self-publish just to see what we could do with my base alone, and it's been a blessing so far. But we did the pre-order option, so a lot of there's a few that got a little agitated there because they felt like we you swiped my credit card and it's been a month. I said it's a pre-order option,
Right.
so we had to pre-order with no inventory. So that means that we had to meet a goal to get to the goal. And then when we got to the goal, then we could print the books. And then we had to wait for the books with the company that we went for. So it's been a little, but we're catching up. I think we've got about 700 going out today, matter of fact, on top of 3,000 more that were supposed to go out, I think, a couple of days ago. So I think we're up to, that'll be about 6,700, 6,800. That's like out. And I think we have maybe 3,000 more. I don't know. I haven't looked, but so we're approaching 10,000 overall between
That's awesome.
Amazon and all the others. So it's like pretty cool. And we
Yeah,
did put it on Amazon finally because Shopify system, man, I mean, you have to code every city in every country for international shipping. It is the most craziest thing you ever seen in your life. So Amazon, you just put in one little number and it calculates all of them for you. So
that's
so for if you're international, you have to pay a little more because Amazon's costs are, ooh,
yeah,
they're I
ridiculous.
see now why people I see why businesses I've seen Shark Tank a lot, and they'll say, "Are you on Amazon?" They're like, "Man, like our cost now is this, and to get on Amazon, we have to raise it to this just to meet any
Right.
kind of a margin to be able to print other stuff and to keep it on." So anyway, it's
It's true.
I don't know how John Grisham and some of them would have made it in today's world. Harper Lee, any big author out there, they wouldn't have made it if they only had Amazon. Uh, but I
Sure.
guess it's like Walmart. You got to be on their shelf, but
Right.
it's just, you know,
The Midnight Rider rides again.
I got
What
it right here.
snapshot?
Yes, forgot. It's
Ooh,
right here.
I
So,
love the cover. I mean, that is so sharp. It pops out, really. It really
I
does.
mean, it's
And
really
look how
it's a
thick it
great.
is too.
Well, this is an 8.5 by 11 too, so we did it where people could not have to struggle with font size and things of that nature. Uh, and then we put trying to find a great example of the timeline. What I did, um, the timeline is really key because I'm trying to find a great example. So like that, we put it to where you could see the dates. I go in
Oh, that's
chronological order.
awesome.
I
Oh,
just did chronological order from 2015
mm.
all the way to present. They had to cut off. So I had to cut off at December. So I'm at December. So I'll pick up, there will be a finale of it whenever, whenever this whole thing is signed, sealed, delivered, I guess. It'd be when all the 11 executive orders of Donald Trump, the 11 national emergencies, whenever they're terminated, is when we start seeing all the, you know,
Yeah,
things
the
of that nature. So,
dominoes. Right, right.
right.
Yeah, so true, so true. I mean, in regards to the operation, the military operation, and where we are today. I mean, you mentioned the 11 executive orders, and and how in the last 3 years, Biden has continuously re-upped them. So that says a lot, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because when you go look at what a national emergency is, it's got a 2-year clause on it. And the oldest national emergency that's still running right now is 79. So I know it sounds a little grotesque, but I always make a joke with I say, ladies and gentlemen, if a national emergency needs over 5 years, 10 years, but especially 40 plus, it's a hemorrhoid. It's a problem. It's not an emergency anymore. And that alone should tell people that the federal corporation before, that all the presidents before. Now, some of these people were good when they went in, but then they got in, they realized, oh my God, this mafia is that deep. And then all of a sudden they had people with guns on them kind of deal behind the scenes, going, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. So, this is not an attack on presidents out there. This is just to set the record straight that should show people about the federal corporation because we became a federal corporation via the Organic Act of 1871, 1878, then the Federal Reserve in 1913. And then you look at 28 U.S. Code 3002, it defines us as a corporation. It tells you in the
Right.
United States Code. So not all code and laws are good, but it helps you see what we became and then how your money, your dollar, your taxpayer dollar, if you're a low level liberal and you're a low level conservative, you're a peasant to the corporation. Doesn't matter what your beliefs are down here. It's like I tell everybody, if you're living your life by the golden rule, or if you believe in God or whatever that may be, your belief system, if you're not hurting or harming somebody and you're doing what Hank Williams sang about, if you're minding your own business and you won't be minding mine, if you're doing that, then and if all the neighbors are doing that and all your friends and family are doing that, then it doesn't matter what you do when you go in your household, being Buddhist, being atheist, being gay, being whatever you are, Mormon, or whatever, has nothing to do with paving these federal highways, these state highways, has nothing to do with that. So, now you can have personal differences, cool, but it's like I tell people, you better be careful about your life because when you stand in front of God, he ain't gonna ask you about my sins. He's gonna be asking about yours. So, live your life. So when you boil all that down and you look at just the simplicities of that, of course, there's been some recent stuff that's happened just as of yesterday. I mean, like Biden and he's apparently in Palm Beach, Florida, Air Force One sitting there with Trump Force One sitting there. Great optic. Well, when he walks off the Air Force One, he's on the belly of it, what they call the belly, the short stairs. They call it the it's slang term, call it the ass end. And I've had people write in, that's not the back of the plane. It doesn't matter. It's what they call it. They
Mm,
call it the ass end. And Trump brought that to everybody's attention a couple of years ago on purpose, because the only time he walked off of the ass end was an optic, and he made a joke about it. And he said that, he made some references. Well, China made Obama walk of it, and and boy, did the media then say, "Oh, the president was snubbed today. He was disrespected. They made him walk off the ass end of Air Force One." Biden's been walking off of it the last 2 years. All right, so there's that, and then there was a salute again today. 2 months ago, there was a slow salute, and then yesterday he dissipates. First off, it's a crappy salute, but it's slow. If you go to Google and you look up memorial, it's hard to find it, but you can find the slow salute. It's for funeral services. The military, it's a military custom. It's for funeral services. It's called a 3-second salute. So also goes along with the three volley salute, which he got on January 20th, 2021, the three cannons. All
right.
right. So the 3 seconds where it's defined as you give that soldier, if it's a soldier, you give him the respect as he's going off. All right. So now this ain't nothing to do with respecting Biden. So that's where people struggle with that. They're showing you funeral honors is what the optic is, but that's a military custom. Has nothing to do with however you believe out there. It's a custom. So that's consistent with what they did on January the 20th. And that was the closest thing they could show back then to be an optic. Like if you really think about all the things they could have done to give people like a tidbit of what's going on to keep the continuity of operations going, that's the closest thing they could have done because of your normal celebrations of an inauguration do have a military band. They do have a red carpet rollout. They do have a cannon salute. So they did it with what they worked with what they had to show that this is not really an inauguration. But if you're someone who knows the polar opposite of a 21 gun salute, the three volley salute, then you're like, wow. So they're staying consistent with it. So like yesterday,
Well,
of course, he
could that
dissipated right here.
could that be that he's talking about his own demise going slow? I mean, because if they do that in honor of someone, passing away, a military, I mean, would that be saying it his time is coming to an end?
Could be. I mean, because I personally, my personal opinion on the whole operation side of things, because I don't know what they're going to do with it because I'm not a part of President Trump's team. Uh, that and then also the military that's doing this. The separation where people struggle is the military is not going to rush in for civilians. That's just not what we do. Now the military protects borders and things of that nature. Then you have the continuity of operations going on. That's your Congress. That's your judicials. That's all of that area. But so I don't know how they're going to do it. But I think what they'd have to do is if you go in an operation like this, first off, people have to realize Israel has all been planned. Those
Right.
are in Army manuals way back 2019. They tell you those are in Canadian Army manuals that align with, and they specifically say in the Canadian manual, align with US and Israel. All
Right.
right. And it specifically tags a number of $572 million in both those manuals. Well, when you go back to 2018, 2019, all the headlines where the Army was spending $500 million training our soldiers for our next wars will be in mega cities, not inside them, but beneath them. That's subterranean warfare, which is tunnels and sewers. The
Right.
Washington Examiner, August 2020, had an article. Our next war will be in sewers and tunnels. 26 days later, as President Trump always says, I'm not paying for it. We're not paying for it. Somebody else will. 26 days later, what are the odds? that the president who went after pharmaceutical companies more than anybody and the opioid crisis, all in his orders, and the human rights abuse, all his orders align with drug trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, and human trafficking, a war on those. And then what he put into place with the War Powers Act, all of those combined, he's the very one who went after all forms of trafficking, but especially drug trafficking, and all his orders align with that to this day, or they wouldn't be extended by Biden.
Right.
All right. So when you go to this article, 26 days after all these articles about war going to sewers and tunnels, and you got Johnson and Johnson losing a case in Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, and they were forced to pay $572 million. Now that is a random number to be coming up with 572 million to do with pharmaceuticals. And then all of a sudden in these Army manuals of 2019, you go back, which would have been a year before that article, and it says $572 million that the
Right.
Army is going to be spending to train our soldiers for our next war. Sewers and tunnels, which involve trafficking of all sorts, heavy trafficking. So
Mm,
when you do the math, like I tell people, that's what that book does. It's a chronological order.
love
And
it.
when you go back and you do the chronological order of these events and or operations, even though they'd be more classified as missions, not operations. Operations is a big picture. And you go back and do that math, and you fast forward to today,
Wow.
Israel. Israel's a great example of that article and also of that manual. And in 1 week time, 1 week, when they told everybody that it was on the anniversary of Yom Kippur, October the 7th, all
Right.
right, 2023. What are the odds of that? In Jewish culture, 50 years equals a what? A jubilee. And it's normally a good thing for the Jews. It can be bad, but a 50-year jubilee. All right, so that's 50-year anniversary. In 1 week's time, like I show people, if you've ever been to Delaware, like I tell people, Delaware is a great example of if Delaware was attacked by all 49 other states, including Canada and Mexico, this is what this would look like, because this is what it did look like. October the 7th to October the 14th, in 1 week's time, these were the countries that were in and out of Israel over a little group that consists of about 25 to 30,000 people. These countries were in Israel in 1 week. The United States, UAE, United Arab Emirates, Netherlands, Belgium, Tunisia, Algeria, Nigeria, Sweden, Australia, Canada, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Romania. Um, let's see, Russia was there. Russia, the enemy. What's Russia doing there? All right, there was all kinds of, and I can't even name them all. Let's see, I'm forgetting some. Norway, United Kingdom. They were all in Israel in 1 week's time, and I'm missing a couple strewn out there. But all those countries for a little, no, it's not little to Jewish people. I'm not saying it like that, not degrading it, but I mean 25,000 the Houthi group, like that, the heathens as I call them,
Yeah. Zionist.
Hamas. Get out of here. Like that is, it's not even there anybody who has any kind of intelligence. So all this stuff's in legislation though. But you have to know what you're looking for, absolutely, and that's the frustrating part to a lot of people, and I get that. But it still goes back to when you train your mind and you train yourself of how you in the world we live in today, unfortunately, is Google search and search engine optimization. So that's probably a key thing that people can do is learn how to search the engine and learn how to
Yeah.
put in keywords, but you got to know those keywords as well. So it's frustrating, I get it, but there's nobody out there receiving intel from anybody. If you think that someone's going to get credit before Donald John Trump and all the men and women behind this,
Right.
um, that ain't happening, and I don't want that. I'm not asking for that. I just picked up his torch and kind of carrying it for him, because I'm just taking everything he put in legislation, but also the laws and the orders he used to show people. So there's a lot of stuff that's showing people. So Biden, could
I
it be that he's on his last leg? I think what they'd have to do this is my personal view. This was not an operation that they put all these men and women into operation like the three that got killed. They were reserves, by the way. The only person who has federalized the reserves active duty is Donald John Trump. All right, the Biden reserve clauses back July and April last year were extension clauses. They weren't new orders. They were extendables from whom? Donald Trump, because where the actual declaration is in the War Powers Act. That's Donald John Trump.
Yeah.
That was a wartime power. All right. So I think that they got to do this. This is how you get everybody to get on their knees, not in a bad way, not in a way of like, oh, bow down to me, but in order to get all this discernment and all this informational warfare and the spiritual warfare, all this stuff, in order to suppress that for a moment, to get everybody's attention, what you do is you would have Biden come out on like a State of the Union or either address the nation and spill all the beans. You don't have to go back far. We could just go back to JFK and spill the beans on what's been going on, and then at the end of all of it,
Rip the
take his
mask
mask
off.
off.
That would be, like, so phenomenal, and I know we only
That would get
have
everybody.
that would totally get everybody. Now, I know that we only have 10 minutes left, and I wanted to, number one, it was crazy that he admitted that President Trump was still the seated president like a couple days ago, right? I mean, that was like amazing sign. Everybody, hello, wake up, okay? And then another thing is a lot of people are wondering in regards to the border because we have you and I have mutual friends. They are all, I think they're probably there now. TakeTheBorderBack.com with Robert AG and the team and so forth. Um, what's your uh, what are you thinking in regards to this whole border thing? Because Biden was saying, "Oh yeah, F6 or F15s, whatever. We're going to take care of this." Is the military going to take we the people away from the border and say, hey, you better let these illegals, which really ticks me off because the veterans are suffering and here we have the illegals having money and nice places to lay their head. So I'm throwing that at you because I know we only have about 8 minutes left.
Well, the border is always a touchy subject for one, because anytime you have a point of entrance, you're always going to have something, period, no matter what. And then you got to be able to separate what President Trump's talking about with policies and then true people trying to actually physically come across the border. And then also physically trying to come across when they're coming through an entrance, point of entrance, where they don't have their actual card to get in. All
Right.
right. So there's about three different things that parallels together. All right. When President Trump says millions are coming over illegally every day, he's not talking about jumping the fence, trying to squeeze through, things of that nature. It's nothing like that. I've been to the border in this past year. I went down and I drove the whole border from about El Paso, a little before El Paso, all the way to San Diego. The wall is intact. There's it now. There's places where there's water, sure. The Rio Bravo, I mean Rio Bravo. So okay, Rio Grande. I got John Wayne on my mind, and so you got rivers and you got waterways that the fence maybe deteriorated years ago, things of that nature, and then they were putting all this barbed wire in there. So the key thing with the border for me personally is just the fact that it still goes back to legislation. And it's one thing to have Americans show up, that's cool. Whatever, you can't stop that. That's what we pride ourselves on. But Texas, anybody who's a Texan, all right, even if you weren't a native Texan, I'm not a native Texan, but I lived there for a long time and a resident of Texas. All right, Texas, there's a few things about Texas people need to know first. One, Texas was its own country before. It was a republic, the Republic of Texas. All right. And Texas has always threatened to secede from the Union because their GDP, their gross domestic product, is so high that if they left the Union, it would destroy the other 49 states. It would be a struggle, even with California, because of the way California's cost of living and all that stuff, the way that is. So Texas alone holds their weight for this country. Two, the other cool thing about Texas, the state flag of Texas is the only flag that can fly equivalent to the United States flag. All other state flags have to fly lower than the US flag.
Mm.
So Texas is a big deal. Texas also has their own National Guard. It's not national, it's called the Texas Guard. So not only do they have armed forces active duty within Texas, your Air Force and your Army, then you also have the National Guard. You have some reserves there, and then also Texas Guard. All right. So the main article that came out just this week, Monday, I think it was, or maybe over the weekend, was that the National Guard were holding off the Border Patrol. That's a big thing right there, because then you got to go back to go who federalized the National Guard. They have to be federalized to do that. Now, there could be a state of emergency issue, but that's a federal issue. The border is a federal issue because the border is not only in Texas, the border is in New Mexico, California. You have borders everywhere. See, people think of a border with Mexico being only because Mexico aligns with Texas and, New Mexico, Arizona, and also California. And it's a federal issue.
Mm.
It's also part of our Constitution. The presidential duties is to protect his country from invaders. All right, so that's a federal issue. It's not just a Texas thing. And the only time that the National Guard had been federalized was Donald John Trump. When everybody thought they went into DC in January
Right.
for an inauguration, they were already federalized at that time. That order has to be revised, revoked, rescinded, or resolved. It's not been any of those. So it's a wartime power code, because when you go read those, that's what I tell people, when you go read them, and then you know how the National Guard operates and how they're called to service, and you see how the reserves are the key ones to look at. The reserve components are all over the nation right now. They were all over the flight app a while ago,
Right.
active. Reserves don't operate under dual missions. They serve federal missions only. They're not state only. So they're not like National Guard with state emergencies. And National Guard is a big one out there, a big one that I hear it all the time still. And I'm like, you're not reading. You're not reading how the National Guard are called up by presidential call up. The governors, I hear it all the time, the governors have control of the National Guard for state emergencies only. So when it's a national emergency, that governor has to go to the adjutant general, things of that nature. When it's like Hurricane Katrina is a great example, right? When it was declared an emergency, a disaster zone, that governor went to the adjutant general of Louisiana, and that adjutant general went to Alabama, Mississippi, I think maybe Arkansas, and Texas, and then the National Guard. But that would have been a presidential thing that's already checked off of, because when it's a national, like a disaster kind of deal, then you don't waste time. They go ahead and go ahead, get them in there because people are dying or drowning and things of that nature. So when it's something of this nature, when the president cannot enforce the law as the code reads, then he can call up the National Guard and the reserves to federal duty. The only person who's done that is Donald Trump in his orders in the 50 U.S. Code 1550, which is the War Powers Act itself, and then 10 U.S. Code 12302, 12304. Those are your reserves, all right? And then when you look under those two clauses, the last amended sections of them are Donald Trump's executive orders. All right, there's no termination clause under each of those. Until there's a termination of those, because one of them had a national emergency in them, it's still active. And if it wasn't Biden, real or not, even though I know he's not, but for the people out there just have to say he is, if he was real, he wouldn't be extending that order 3 years in a row. It would be dead. It would have been terminated. It would have expired with the 2-year clause. Why did he extend them? Why is he expanding them? And
Right.
even though he had orders in, like I said, July and April last year with the reserve components, those were extended orders. Those were extensions, which is what you call a continuity of operations. And so the Texas thing is I know it's sensitive because you have people will say, "Well, I've been down there and I see these people there." Ladies and gentlemen, every time President Trump talks about the border, he mentions two words together: central casting. Every time he talks about it. If you Google central casting, the number one thing that pops up, search engine optimization, is centralcasting.com, the leading background actor agency in the United States.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
So, and a lot of them have ankle bracelets on that they're trackable. They know who they are. The ones they sent to Nantucket, they were dressed better than the people on Nantucket. All right, they're not these low lives that people think. It's all an operation, but the operation also, if you're mad about it, if you turn and you get mad about President Trump and say, well, why would they do that? Well, if you're mad, you're supposed to be,
yeah.
because at what point will Americans care
Right.
about our nation, our identity, and who we let in and who we have here? If everybody wants to be here for the right reasons, great, bring them here. But we have too many that come here that don't want to buy into our American way of life. And then what happens? We end up looking like we look like the last 60 years.
Yeah, no joke, no joke. What about this crackpot? What is her name? Jean Carroll, and this whole lawsuit. Is this like a oh gosh, like another act, or is this something that, I mean, because she was on some broadcast and she was like a bumbling idiot.
Well, it keeps people distracted too. I mean, it's a distraction piece because President Trump said on the campaign trail in 2016, never again we voice to our enemies what we're doing. All
Right.
right. So it's a distraction piece. And Americans are used to being told what's going on, which is dangerous because if it's for your safety and your health, and they're telling people what's going on, the enemy's finding out because he said that specifically. If we tell you what's going on, guess who else finds out?
Right.
So a lot of this is a distraction piece. They know what's going on. President Trump, all that, Congress knows what's going on. Judges know what's going on. It's all under an operation. It's called an occupation, military occupation, which is outlined in the Law of War Manual. And then the Federal Continuity Directives 1 and 2, which were put out January 17th and June 13th, 2017, and they have operational dates. I've heard some smart alecks out there talking about we've always had continuity of government plans. They have to be invoked. And so in the Federal Register, there's dates of operational dates of these two. All right, and it says specifically, it says 2018 to 2022, the first one, and the second one, 2020 to 2024. Oh, I mean, what are the odds of that? The final battle year, as President Trump calls it. What's the odds of that?
I know,
There's just
right?
no odds there. So I tell people just to there's two things going on. One, you love drama and you love all this drama and well, follow it.
Right.
But don't complain about wondering what's actually happening
Mm-hmm.
because there is a side over here that says, here's your legislation, here's the laws, here's the orders, here's the military portions that's been given. And there's some of us out there that can pair those together for you. It ain't a lot, but there's a few of us who can. All right. So if you want to know, you got to put all this aside. Truly put this aside
Yeah.
because all it's doing is making you mad, bitter, upset, frustrated, furious, infuriated, all these other terms. So you got to put that aside and then pick up, how does Congress work? Legislation. All right. How do judges and the judiciary system work? Legislation, laws and orders. How does the military operate? Laws and orders. All right. And then there's a way that they pair with federal via executive orders and treaties and things of that nature. So they do have overlap. Um, and that's the key thing with that. And it's not, I don't like telling people not to do something if they feel, but what ends up happening is like J6, people end up going into an already planned situation because they weren't reading the laws and orders back here. And they end up, maybe if they're not the kind that turns away when they told turn away, and they're the kind who climbs over something or oh, we're not leaving, and they get arrested, well, then the operation has to treat them where they don't blow the operation. They have to treat them the same as they've done anybody else and arrest them because of that situation.
Mm.
So now there's people who don't like law enforcement. There's people who don't like the authority that some of these guys command. Well, we're there, and until Americans, by all of us, get people to see what's going on, if there was law enforcement doing something out of their jurisdiction and out of the Constitution, then it would still take a massive force to overrule them. So, like I tell people, you don't like Donald Trump and certain people, or if you love him, he was put where he's at for a reason. I
Mm,
wasn't put there for that reason. He was. And there's a lot of men and women that are over here, up here with him. They were put there at that appointed time for this reason, not me. God put me where I'm at, being able to take what they've done and then show it. And maybe I'll get to work for them one day, because God help us all. We don't want to be in this situation again. So you don't want to say, oh, I want to take their place one day. No, because we don't want to be through this again.
yeah, no
Right.
kidding, no kidding.
Uh,
And I really believe that you're going to, and I know I said this before, but I see you working, with the team. So are we in the final? Is this the final year, or do you think this is gonna drag on a little bit longer?
No, I don't think it'll drag on too much longer. I think that this is the final battle. As anything that President Trump says is been right on the
On.
money. It's been golden, and I don't see that. I don't see it dragging out too much longer. It is a process. There will be. It's not going to be a day though where everything just stops and here's all the answers. People have been having to follow this whole time,
Mm,
um, and answers have been. I see it every day what I'm looking at, and I wish I could take a USB cord and download my brain and everything into everybody, because it's been shown every single day. So it's just going to keep playing up, playing up, playing up, and then yeah, history will answer for these orders, and why they saw three cannons on January the 20th, and why the slow salutes. The history will account for it, no doubt, because that's the only way we can flip the cognitive dissonance out here and the people to pull your weight where you can.
yeah,
So I don't see it going in the, you know, 2025, 2026 in a drag kind of effort. I see it going into it full fledged, more operations and bumping it up the clean out process, but
yeah,
just another phase of it.
sure. Now, were you able to go to Gitmo?
I haven't been. We still don't know if the guy was playing politics or not, but
Okay.
that's I it is what it is. I still have the phone. If I got two, yeah, I got two phones here. There's no reason at all why I have two phones except for that reason. But if I get to go, I get to go. But I'm still with the station that brought me on for that. So I can still go to any other setting. I've got my credentials, my press credentials, so I can go anywhere with the military or law enforcement. Uh, so
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. I noticed that you've been placing a lot of the debt clot on your uh, Telegram and so forth.
Well, yeah, just because they're right, whoever it is putting that up, they're right on the money. Anybody who can come up with graphics like that, they're when you can condense down something in a graphic like that, it's epic. So they also know what's going on too.
Awesome. Well, I know that you got to go, and I really appreciate you being on with us. We're getting your book, and I want to have you back on, and I'd like to kind of thumb through it, with you
Yeah.
for the listeners so that they can see how vitally important it is to get your book at this time and in the season. By the way, I love your hat. Woohoo, Alan. We just got one for him too, just over the holidays. So
Awesome.
nice hat. But Derek Johnson, thank you so much. Where can people get the book and where can they find you?
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, so RattleTrap1776.com goes to my Shopify page. So you'll just click see more gear or more gear, and it goes over in the books right there. And then Amazon Kindle and also Amazon paperback. So you just look up The Midnight Rider Rides Again. Be sure to leave a comment too after you read it, naturally. But we got a lot of trolls on there that haven't read anything. So we gotta get the 3-star rating up. But the 3-star matches their brain is what I tell them, but, anyway, so, yeah.
Awesome. And you are on Rumble, correct?
I'm on Rumble, and so my Rumble and my Twitter, or it's now called X, my Rumble, Twitter, and then Telegram are all the same. They're at RattleTrap 1776. Be careful with the T's because there's a lot of people out there faking. I'm on Facebook, 1776 Nation. There's also a copycat page on there. They're frauds. But mine has 95,000 followers, so that kind of differentiates it. And then let's see what else. True Social at Derek Johnson, and then my username, my display name will be RattleTrap 1776, but my actual at handle is at Derek Johnson. So yeah, so you can find me on all those, and of course I still have the documents.info up. I didn't take those down even with the book because I
Wow.
understand that we're in a tight situation right now, economy, and so there's that, and then DerekJohnsonCountry.com.
Woohoo! Looking forward to your new what do they call them? No, I was gonna say album. Oh Lord, that
Well,
dates me big time.
I just put out singles now. That's
Okay.
what the trend is. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So where can they get that? Like your
So on,
music?
if you go on Spotify or Pandora, whatever you have out there, iTunes, Apple, you just have to look up probably one of my songs and it'll pull up the rest of my repertoire. So you got to look up maybe like right now, right beer right now, or can't say no girl, or real cool kind of hot, and then it'll just pull up all my other songs. But there's another Derek Johnson, the Billboard artist in the Christian world, and uh, so I tell people I wear a hat all the time. He doesn't, so that's how
Yeah.
you separate us. So yeah,
Well, I saw the video with you singing at church, and it was really awesome. You could tell that the people really enjoyed it. It was great.
well, I don't know. That may have been the other Derek Johnson because I don't know if I
Really?
have one that may sing in church. Yeah, I don't.
Oh,
Do
is he
I?
said something? Yes, you did. It
I
was
don't
you, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't think I have one on YouTube or anything like that. Oh, well, maybe I was singing at Bob Joyce's church. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it was
That's the only
awesome.
one. Yeah, well
Okay,
that they let me yeah, well I didn't wear my hat in that one. So I couldn't
right.
be this being in church. I couldn't do that. So
Well, it was
yeah.
awesome. It was awesome. Thank you, Derek, for being with us. We love you, brother. You're in our prayers always.
Well, I appreciate it. So thank you.
All righty. God bless you. God bless you, everyone. Thank
Okay.
you for joining us on Upfront in the Prophetic. Until then, blessings always. Amen.